Hello and welcome, Star Wars fans, to this week's episode of Duel of the Rings. My name is Amanda, and I'm joined by my newest co-host, Brian, today, as we discuss ranks and hot takes from the latest episode of Ahsoka, Part 6, Far, Far Away.
Absolutely.
Here we go.
Here we
are.
And the takiest of takes.
The hottest and takiest of takes.
Mm-hmm.
We are down Brody this week, which is honestly, I mean, he hit 100 episodes and then he was like, peace, I'm out of here. 101, we're bringing in something new. Brian, welcome back. You know, we heard a lot of great feedback after we had you on a couple of weeks ago that
right?
you just brought a lot of really great talking points about. You've done your homework on the Duel of the Ranks website, and you know, we sometimes need a third person with us, and you're just kind of helped filling in that spot right now.
That's what I do. I'm here to bring it all down. Y'all are too interesting and fun. I'm here to keep it real and make sure everything is objectively true.
That's true. Yeah, hopefully, because we're starting to get into a lot of bigger ideas as the show goes on. So with that going on, I am going to give the summary for this week's episode. Part 6, Far, Far Away. Ahsoka and Huyang travel through hyperspace in the mouth of a purrgil, reminiscing about old tales Huyang would tell the Jedi. Sabine wakes up aboard the Eye of Sion as Morgan Elsbeth arrives at her destination, Peridea. As her, Baylan, Shin, and Sabine deboard, they are greeted by 3 Night Sisters known as the Great Mothers. Soon, Thrawn's Star Destroyer, the Chimera. Okay, that's what happens when I...
It's all right.
Arrives, and we are introduced to the Night Troopers and the Captain of the Guard, Enoch. Sabine is let go by Thrawn for bringing his escape plan and lets her go out to try and find Ezra. Running into pirates and a new alien race known as the Noti, we eventually are led to a small village that Ezra has been hiding out in. So Ezra is back.
He sure is. He's exactly how I pictured him. He's going through his Obi-Wan phase. He's in his robes. He's just chilling. He's growing out his hair and his beard.
He looks a lot like his dad.
That's true. That's true. Yeah, I do love that they kind of continued what they set up in Rebels. In that sense.
Yeah, me too. And for those of you who haven't seen Rebels, you're missing out, as we've mentioned time and time again. And the series, spoiler alert, ends with Ezra going missing. And it has been about 11 years in that time span that where we find ourselves now.
Right. I wasn't sure if it was 11 or 10 or if it's still kind of up in the air, but I mean, my first impression is that for them being gone for that much time, not a lot has really happened in that other galaxy. They've just been kind of sitting there this whole time. I mean,
yeah.
Okay.
So I'm glad that the episode, like, we get right into it. We start with Ahsoka, but then Ahsoka's like gone. Like, the rest of the episode is not about her whatsoever. We are focused on this new planet, Peridea, which Baylan has this nice monologue with his apprentice Shin Hati, where they talk about the legends that Huyang kind of teases up in the beginning of these sort of fairy tales and folklore that are all kind of connected to this planet. And Shin's like, well, those are just stories, right? Like, they don't really mean anything. And
I didn't hear those stories growing up.
Yeah. And he's like, well, I mean, I think there's something more to be seen here. And I'm really excited for what that is going to look like.
Yeah, I hope there's more to be seen there.
Because right now there's a whole lot of nothing.
Yeah, a whole big nothing burger. But I mean, I love the cute little turtle guys, the little shell hermit crabs. I love that they have clothes too and shells. It's like, wow, they're just really modest people.
Yeah, they have a great defense mechanism built in place where they have like their little shield, like rock cover, which is super clever. I was trying to tell if it was a combination of puppetry and CGI. The faces looked maybe like special effects, but the clothing and looked pretty real to me.
Yeah. I think it's good to not know. They were one of those characters that I just love the character, and I didn't care if it was CGI or practical. They just did them right, you know?
Yeah, I love when Star Wars brings us new alien creatures, and I'm glad that Ahsoka has kept that part of the thing, kept us part of the show.
Yeah, and those hunters, the Marauders as well. I guess those are the two inhabitants of this planet, so far of the entire galaxy that we really know of. Than
Do
a
you know
space
anything
force.
more about those Marauders? I didn't see anything in my initial research of it.
They kept them really vague, I think, just so they could, have one action scene kind of shoehorned into the show. But they're kind of trying to build into them. They're going to align with Balin and Shin, it seems like, by the end of the episode. So maybe we'll see more from them, but so far, just pretty generic bad guys.
Yeah, I got that impression too. One thing that I had to pause during my watch, and I had to explain to my husband sitting next to me that this connection was finally put together in my brain when Huyang and Ahsoka are talking about how Sabine willingly went with the enemy, and they're talking about her having her own decision in that, and Ahsoka saying she wasn't ready to make that decision, and Huyang's like, maybe that was Sabine's only choice. And that immediately took me back to the parallel of Ezra helping Maul find the holocron in Rebels. He helps his enemy and inadvertently becomes like an apprentice for him, and kind of ties himself into both the good and the bad. And I don't know why it took me this long to realize it, but Sabine literally parallels that decision when she assists Balin by handing over the map.
Yeah, she's kind of playing into his hand, and I think that's kind of what Luke does too, essentially, in episode 5. That's kind of how I always see these decisions, is that the traditional Jedi is telling them, Yoda or Ahsoka are telling them, hey, look, you got to do what's right for the greater good. But, of course, if they're the hero, they're never going to end up doing it. They're going to try to find a way to save both. So, I mean, it's an interesting character choice, but I definitely think it's nothing new that we haven't seen from Star Wars, but I'm excited to see Sabine's character. She's the only real character that seems to have a solid, progression. Like other characters like Balin is, really interesting because we're starting to peel back those layers and reveal more about him, but Sabine's the only character so far that has, a real believable arc to me, including Ahsoka, because she kind of seems to go back on this becoming a traditional Jedi instead of what I thought the vision meant to her, which was accept all possibilities and let Sabine be her own person, make her own choices.
Yeah, she's still having a hard time with that too. So it'll be interesting to see what really does change about her outlook in these next few episodes. I also want to talk about, I brought up that monologue that Balin has with Shin, and I wish we would have been able to review the Mortis arc episode before we started watching this. But when he was talking about breaking the cycle entirely, that's immediately where my mind went, was the father, daughter, son, something deeper and bigger at play. It's not just the Jedi and the Sith. And that's kind of what Mortis always reminds me of. And right. I'm wondering if you picked up on any of that as well.
I didn't. That wasn't my first thought when I heard that line. My first thought was Ganondorf, because that's his motivations in the Wind Waker for all our Zelda fans. But Ganondorf's trying to break this cycle. He's the villain that's always coming back, trying to dominate. He's also the one trying to free them from it, ironically. So his motivations, I'm excited that they're finally giving Balin some conflict with the other villains, because they've been kind of hinting at it through the whole show, and now it's finally coming somewhere where there's gonna be a real stuff going down. Yeah,
and I still am really curious, because we learned that he was a general back in the Jedi Order, and Thrawn finds out about it, and he's like, he's not one of the first ones to want to leave the Order, but I think that shows that part of Balin's nature is he's not going to just fall in line and do whatever. He clearly has his own plan, and now, since he's got to this location, it's really now about his plan.
Right. Whatever that is. I mean, it could be a million different things. I hope they actually give us a real answer eventually. I'm sure they will.
Welcome, KG, and welcome, Jeffrey Miller, to the chat. Thanks for tuning in. We're talking about, again, part 6, Far, Far Away. I was also pointed out to me on TikTok at Celebration on the live stage when Dave Filoni was there. Christian, Brody, and I were all there. Dave Filoni gets asked the question, "Where is Ezra?" where's Ezra? And he's like, you want to know where Ezra is? He's far, far away. He wasn't lying.
In a very literal way.
In a very literal way. He was far, far away. And the episode is far, far away. Beautiful.
Oh, they brought the thing full circle. The exact line is the actual title of the episode. Yes. I didn't even realize that. Wow. Yes. Hidden in plain sight.
I know, right?
Yeah.
It was a magical. I love when Star Wars kind of wraps that beautiful little bow on everything.
Oh, yeah. And, Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau are the kind of guys to sneak those connections in. They're all about the big multi, universe kind of thing, tying in a bunch of different characters and the deeper lore and getting really specific with those details. It's like they're teasing the fans. So it's fun to be a fan with those guys, honestly.
Yeah, it's in good hands. It really is. So what else stood out to you about this episode?
Yeah, I think this episode is what convinced me that this is not Rebels season 5. Let's other than the fact that we haven't even seen Zeb in this show yet, and that most of the other characters have been sidelined but Sabine, I think it's clear that they're making room for a season. I'm hoping they're making room for Rebels season 5. But it's clearly like, they've used the characters of the Ghost crew well throughout this show, but Ahsoka is not really is she really one of the Ghost crew even? I don't really
she's
part
not.
Of the squad. She's there. She has some great episodes in Rebels. And I love her relationship with Sabine. It definitely is the most interesting thing happening because it's kind of the only thing happening. But I'm just really still hoping for a real Rebels season 5.
I know, me too. And that kind of brings me to another point that I want to talk about, which is Ezra Bridger. He is a live action human being now. And unfortunately, the first thing that I can't help but notice are his contact lenses. Oh my God. Once again. And I even posted it on my own personal Instagram where I was like, this show needs to chill with the contact lenses. And first of all, Star Wars the official account is out there posting promotional pictures the day after or the night of the episode. So if you don't want spoilers, just stay off of social media entirely.
Yeah.
But Ezra could have had, I know his cartoon character has bright blue eyes, icy blue, super cyan, but that doesn't mean that it needs to be a 1-to-1 translation. You guys took on the objective to take a cartoon show and make it feel like real life. Ezra Bridger is a human being. His eyes are not even regular human being blue eyes. His eyes look like he should be able to see through walls.
You kind of can. Maybe that's what the Force gives you blue eyes. Is that true? That would be nice.
It'd be a lot easier to spot some Jedi.
It's some stormtroopers. Yeah, know who's on your back.
I just don't know why they have to go so hard in on the contacts, and I hate that I have to keep bringing it up, but also maybe it's good for the podcast that I consistently have something to gripe about.
Some of my opinions on this are recycled as well from a couple weeks ago when I was on. But I think that's one of those little details that just clearly would look better CGI. And I think there's a lot of, I guess this kind of ties in with something I said earlier about the show about the new shell people. I forgot what were they called? The hoppy?
Noti?
They're naughty.
N-O-T-I.
Noti. Okay.
Noti.
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 About how, and then BB-8 is my favorite character designs because he's this blend of practical and digital effects that it's just the character. So I think especially with the eye colors, it's just clearly not very convincing. It's just one thing on top of many things that make live action translations kind of not land too well.
Yeah, when I watched that, I'm you could have just as easily had him have brown eyes like he naturally likely does. And I wouldn't have been that's not Ezra. Obviously his eyes are brown,
Not my Ezra.
Yeah. But there's a whole other segment of Star Wars fans that would feel that way. So
and speaking of looking weird, we got to talk about Thrawn.
Yeah, we do got to talk about Thrawn.
His voice is incredible. I love that they did bring the same voice actor back. But he's supposed to be this powerful, demeaning. Demeaning. That's not the right word. this powerful presence on stage, and he's just kind of like walking around. He's got like this weird smirk on his face, which I know is a directing choice, but like, is that the best they could do?
Yeah, and also like don't want to body shame. I know that happened with Tamara Morrison and Boba Fett, but I specifically remember in Rebels, he has a big old gym on his ship that he is just like a meathead. And I guess he must have renovated it or like swapped it out for something, because dude is kind of in his later age is showing a little bit.
11 years of doing the same couple, exercises gets really boring.
I guess, but I mean, like, you guys
dark troopers on that. Are there dark troopers on that ship? Because he was fighting dark troopers hand to hand in that scene.
Exactly. Like, he was fit.
Yeah.
He's kind of zaddy. I mean, that's a conversation for another time. But like, also, you can't think that they have like tons of food out there for him to be just like, I mean, it seems like he says that their numbers are dwindling when Morgan Elspeth says like, oh, you're only going to send like 2 squads to go check out on them. And he's like, actually, we don't really have a lot to go.
We ate the rest.
So what is happening? Maybe they did eat them.
There's definitely some creepy stuff going on.
Yeah, there's a lot of unexplained like tension happening on this planet. And even the Kasugi style, is that what it's called? The armor where the Japanese, the Japanese
mask. Yeah.
Yes. I noticed that it looks like they're, short on resources that they have to recycle like armor, So what has been destroying his army?
I don't know. And they also have like the red Night Sister cloth kind of keeping some of the pieces together. I think the aesthetic is really cool. I just wonder how much they got. Do they have a Michaels there on the planet? They got a lot of fabric.
Yeah,
not a lot of Night Sisters, except the ones in the catacombs, which is gonna be something crazy. I bet next episode. They're setting up for a whole zombie episode. On board a Star Destroyer traveling through hyperspace. That's gonna be intense.
Well, I'm thinking that. Well, yeah, because they have like a couple days that they're going to stay at this planet. And I imagine within that time, Ahsoka and like those Purgles are going to arrive there. And we learned that Peridea is basically like a floating grave where the Purgles go to die, which also was a cool effect. I gave high technical aspects in how those like, it was like a floating graveyard meteor belt kind of thing.
Yeah, how long do those whales have to be there for them to decompose in space? That place is old.
Yeah. KG in the comments said Peridea is dying. That's a really interesting idea. Because like if you think about the Night Sisters apparently originated on this planet, why would they want to leave? You would think that the source of their like power would be where they're from. But they're like, Thrawn says his number one objective is to get the hell out of there.
Maybe someone killed the rest of the galaxies. That's what it seems like to me. It's the rest of there's not a lot going on. Maybe they are just the only ones. It's just like a couple little civilizations, that can't leave the planet. That's all that's left. And or maybe some paranormal. Maybe the Night Sisters wiped out the rest. I mean, they don't seem very nice.
They're not the Nice Sisters.
No.
I am so excited for the Night Sisters, though. Like, they looked awesome.
I thought their costumes were
10 out of 10. Yeah, the voice effects, even like the whole, like they speak as kind of, or they are like one being almost, and how they're supposed to be able to see the fortune, but Sabine is the loose thread. And that just allegory, and I know that we also talked about in an earlier episode the different mythology that have kind of been put into this episode too, or this whole series actually.
Yeah, on every level. Yeah, so many different mythologies, like mostly Norse, obviously, like characters straight up out of Norse mythology. But even they brought in like a biblical character, Enoch. That is like a super biblical name. But I think he was taken to heaven to like serve in heaven, but he didn't have to die to get there because he was special or something. Wow. I think that's his backstory. So like, I don't know if there's some weird undead kind of thing happening with Enoch and the other stormtroopers, but he's the only one with the kind of face mask in the helmet.
That was cool too. That's got to be one of the coolest helmets we've gotten in Star Wars.
Oh, great design.
Period.
Oh yeah, yeah. We've gotten some good ones too. But like out of this show specifically, I think he's the coolest original design.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's see. What else? Oh, I wanted to talk about the music a little bit.
Oh,
I mean, the music is always a hit for me.
I gave that a 10 out of 10.
Yes, I love the violins hitting so hard with Balin, and then you get like the grand organ with Thrawn. And then I wonder, did you pick up on this when they are first arriving to Peridea and the grandmothers are waiting for them?
Mm-hmm.
I got the impression of like the 2001 A Space Odyssey, like the da da. Those first two notes happened in the same cadence that famous fanfare comes from, and it felt like a very obvious nod because we were at like this otherworldly experience.
Yeah, and the theme of that is like the unfamiliar. The theme of that movie is confronting the unknown and the unknowable, and Thrawn has kind of just been the unknown for so long. And now it's finally this big reveal with that epic chord progression, the 1 to 5. I got to go back and re-listen to it if that's what you're talking about. But Thrawn's music with the organ especially, it fit very well. All the orchestration, and they know exactly when to pull back to. Like I got no complaints about the score. I think it's the best score we've gotten for, I don't know, maybe ever in Star Wars.
Yeah, no, for real, not exaggerating whatsoever.
Yeah, organ is pretty iconic for his character. I also love it. It's like a Davy Jones thing. Ganondorf also plays the organ. Just like so many connections between all these archetypes.
Yeah.
It's so powerfully there.
Those are great connections. I didn't even think of that. I'm a big Legend of Zelda fan too, by the way. So I love that you were able to bring that into this.
Oh yeah, it's the same philosophy. Star Wars and Legend of Zelda are like basically the same thing to me.
It's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Was there anything else you wanted to touch on before I get into our actual numbered breakdown for this episode?
Right. I'll say, like, when it comes to the immersive universe and like building something bigger, like and the characters themselves are kind of suffering the same fate where like they're doing everything they have to. They're setting up everything that they said they would at the beginning of the show, but it's still just such a slow. I still don't think they're really doing too much outside of like a handful of examples that are really too interesting. But I'm hoping to eat my words next week.
Yeah, and one thing I wonder is if I were to just binge this show all the way through, if I would feel the same way. I think maybe because we are all so used to living in a world with like instant gratification, we can watch something immediately and not have to wait. But this episode, I feel like it did a great job of setting up the next phase of this story. Mind you, there's not a lot left to go, but I like the direction it's going. It felt like the first like 3 episodes were, kind of like just getting started, and then you sort of shift into the next gear, and now it's been going up, and it's like, okay, what's next?
Right. Yeah, I think I said that exact same thing. Almost every episode of this show is that they're building towards something. They're building towards something. And now we're finally getting it in little inklings here and there. It wasn't this big epic throwing everything at you like I would want as an impatient fan myself.
Yeah.
So I'm just hoping it'll be worth it, and that it's going to set up something even bigger for the Mandoverse at large, because they also haven't really done as much with that as I thought they would in this story.
Yeah,
like is in it, and then that's pretty much it.
Yeah. You also brought up a good point. Where is Zeb?
Zeb is like one of my favorite characters.
Zeb is amazing, and we know that they CGI'd him in Mandalorian, and he looked awesome.
Primo.
Where is he?
They're saving him for, I guess, the big space battle, probably.
I'm hoping so.
Maybe he and Callus are off hanging out somewhere.
Being husband and husband?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So again, in our final scores, I gave this episode a 85.5 0.2 out of 100. Brody also sent me a message about his score. I just want to read it real quick. Oh, his point about this episode was Ahsoka's show is better without Ahsoka, just like the Boba show. Why does Disney do this?
Who knows? I mean, she was in it at least.
She was in it. Yeah, at least it wasn't that
character
episode like Boba. Yeah.
I seriously forgot about that scene after I watched it the first time. I was like, wow, they just pulled another Book of Boba Fett where the main character wasn't even in it at all. But I mean, she was in there.
She was in there. She does get the credit. She gets the payout for that one. And he gave it an 83.2. So it didn't bring down his score too much. Tell us what you thought of the episode. How did you rank it?
Yeah, I gave it a 79. Again, this is my first time doing one of these rankings, so I kind of had to like look at it from different, perspectives and really kind of adjust very slightly after my first initial reaction to it. But yeah, really the only category, most of it's like pretty solid, like it's passable as an episode. Other than the characters, like really Balin's the only character that has anything new happen to him this episode. And it's not even anything new happening. It's just kind of his revelation, his monologues are kind of revealing more. So that's really the biggest thing that brought it down for me.
That's a good point, because Morgan Elsbeth has been really just sort of like a vessel to get us to this point. And I was kind of disappointed that nothing more has come of her character. Like, it's been her whole mission to get here. And other than have like this snarky little smile the whole time, which slay, love it. But I'm waiting for something else to happen.
Yeah, I think that it's cool having other Night Sisters, and that I think introducing like more factions outside of just the black and white Jedi versus Sith is what's going to be really interesting about this time period and about exploring things outside of the films in general.
Yeah,
and why I'm so excited for the Acolyte. Well, that's kind of not true.
If it happens.
A lot, but it's yeah. It is very Jedi Sith oriented, but much more complex and much more. It sounds from what it sounds like a lot more new stuff than anything we've ever seen before. So Night Sisters as their own faction would be cool. I don't know if they are going to be in conflict with Thrawn at some point, but it seems like they're going to cause some trouble. That's for sure.
Yeah.
And that'll make Morgan Elsbeth more interesting by proxy.
Yeah. We already know she knows how to fight. So I kind of want to see her get into battle again.
Oh, yeah. A big, like, Pirates of the Caribbean style 3-way battle between, like, her and Balin and Thrawn. All with, like, she's got her, I guess Mando has that staff now. I don't know what weapon she has, but I don't know. I could see that shaking down to be